Chapter 51. Acid-controlling drugs. Hydrochloric acid is secreted by the cells in the stomach when stimulated by food, and it maintains the stomach at a pH of 1 to 4. Secretion is also stimulated by large fatty meals, excessive amounts of alcohol, and emotional stress. So what are the diseases or disorders caused by lots of acid or problems with the stomach acid? Most of them are hyperacidity, too much acid. The general public calls that indigestion, sour stomach, heartburn, and acid stomach. We also have in that group peptic ulcer disease, gastroesophageal reflux disease, erosive esophagitis, duodenal and gastric ulcers, and then we have Helicobacter pylori, which we call H. pylori. It's a bacterium that's found in the GI tract of 90% of the people who have duodenal ulcers and 70% of those with gastric ulcers. Antibiotics are what we use to eradicate the H. pylori, but we may also use some of the drugs we're going to talk about today to control the symptoms while the antibiotics are doing their work. So when we're talking about acid-related problems, it's sort of a continuum. We go from just plain old hyperacidity, too much acid, and as that continues and increases and worsens, we end up with ulceration. So we start with pain that goes along with too much acid, and then we eventually move beyond just plain pain and end up with tissue damage. So how do we treat that? We can start with antacids. Many of them are over the counter. From there, if that's not enough, we can move to H2 antagonists, and if that doesn't do the job, we can move on to proton pump inhibitors. So let's look at the first of that group, the antacids. What do? They neutralize the stomach acid, but they also promote gastric mucosal defense mechanisms. What does that mean? That means it helps by secreting more mucus, which provides a protective barrier against the hydrochloric acid. It helps to secrete bicarbonate, which buffers the acid properties, and prostaglandins, which prevent the activation of the proton pump. So it's helping, not only is it directly neutralizing the acid, it's also stimulating the body to protect itself. And this is needed. This self-protection mechanism is needed so that the stomach doesn't digest itself. Antacids do not prevent the overproduction of acid. They do neutralize the acid once it's there. And this reduction in the acidity leads to less pain. There are many over-the-counter formulations of these drugs available. We have the aluminum salts, we have the magnesium salts, the calcium salts, and sodium bicarbonate. The aluminum salts have constipating effects. They're often used along with magnesium salts to counteract this problem. And this is the group of antacids that's recommended for people with renal disease because it's most easily excreted of the four. Examples of the aluminum salts are Basagel, Alternagel, aluminum and magnesium combination drugs are Gaviscon, Maalox, Mylanta, and Digel. The magnesium salts cause diarrhea. So we often combine them with the aluminum salts, which cause constipation. Put them together, we're more likely to end up with normal bowel functions, or at least not disturb the bowel functions too much. But the magnesium salts are dangerous when they're used with people who have renal failure. The failing kidney cannot excrete the extra magnesium. Examples of magnesium salts are milk of magnesia, and again, the combination products, Gaviscon, Maalox, and Mylanta. Calcium salts. There are many forms of calcium salts, but calcium carbonate is the most common. Now this drug as well can cause constipation, but it's also associated with kidney stones. It's not recommended for people with renal disease, and one of the big problems with calcium carbonate and calcium salts is that there is a rebound hyperacidity. It means once the drug stops working, you get it right, you get that hyperacidity right back. In fact, you might end up with worse hyperacidity than what you started with. These drugs are often advertised as sources of dietary calcium, and the example in this group is Tums. The next group is sodium bicarbonates. They are highly soluble. What does that mean? It dissolves very quickly in water, and often that's how you use it. You plop things in water and then they effervesce, and then you drink it down. It buffers the acidic properties of the acid. It acts very quickly, but it doesn't last very long. And sometimes it's been known to cause metabolic alkalosis. Sodium content in this drug can cause problems with patients who have heart failure, hypertension, or renal insufficiency. And the example in this group, Alka-Seltzer. Antacids are often combined with anti-flatulence. Flatulent is gas. Anti-flatulents are used to relieve the painful symptoms of gas. Over the counter, you can find activated charcoal, and you can find simethicone. What are the problems with antacids as a group? Well, the aluminum and calcium products, we got constipation. The magnesium products, diarrhea. Calcium carbonate, we have problems with flatulence, but we give them simethicone to go along with that. And the biggest thing is we have rebound hyperacidity. And then the problem with the sodium bicarbonates is they're high in sodium. They act quickly, but they don't last long. We can end up with metabolic alkalosis, and sometimes we have problems with this drug. We shouldn't be using it with people with heart failure, hypertension, and renal insufficiency. Antacids have lots of drug interactions and affect the actions of many, many drugs. So when you're giving any kind of medication, you need to see, are people taking antacids?